Okay, it's just a quick video here. I do get a chuckle out of Ben Emlyn-Jones, but I thought this was I thought it was quite interesting.
Professor Fez, are you saying you would want to put cocks into a wood chipper? No, Professor Fez, I don't. This
Professor Fez, a regular viewer of my channel and of Ben's, asked Ben Emlyn-Jones if he'd like to put Professor Brian Cox in a wood chipper because Ben Emlyn-Jones made some comments about Professor Brian Cox earlier in the piece. I might actually take a couple of clips on because he's always complaining about people making ad hominem comments. Is Ben? So maybe you should take a look in a mirror. But anyway, Professor Fez, this is especially for you, Professor. Absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Professor Fez said, would you like to put Professor Brian Cox into a wood chipper? And this is because I said I'd like to lower this Colin guy that Ben had on his panel, his Apollo Detectives panel. A little while ago he introduced this guy he claimed was a scientist, Colin somebody. He thought it would take a minute to get a radio signal from the moon to the Earth. It takes about 1.3 and a bit seconds. That depleted uranium ammunition was used so that you know, the projectile could hit the tank and somehow transfer the radiation from the projectile through the armour into the tank and fry the occupants. So scientist in quote marks there, I suspect. But I said, you know, this guy sounded so irritating. I'd like to lower him into a wood chipper, feet first, so that the screaming didn't stop too soon. Now, you've got to bear in mind, too, that Colin, this quote mark scientist, told everybody that he lives his life through... He learned everything he knows about how to live life from watching cartoons. So I thought this was something that would be, you know, he could get his head around, you know, being someone that's based his life on information he got from cartoons. This is the Colin, by the way. Might even see if I can find that clip. But that was, I fell about laughing when I heard that, because of course cartoons, you've got Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, you know, and the Coyote's always putting a stack of dynamite or a crate of explosive, covering it in birdseed, and then, you know, the woodpecker comes along and starts picking it. Well, the Coyote's on top of a cliff with an Acme anvil, and the Roadrunner comes along and he's got the birdseed at the bottom of the cliff, so the Roadrunner stops to eat the birdseed, and the Coyote drops an anvil on the Roadrunner. So, you know, I thought that lowering him into a wood chipper would be something he could relate to. But anyway, Ben... Ben thinks this was a rather nasty comment.
This is Steve Mumbling talks about that. I'm not that much against him. And as you know, I was basically, the reason I'm not replying to Steve Mumbling anymore is because of his attitude in the last video and saying things like that. That's just...
I shouldn't have stopped it there.
Hateful.
No, it's not hateful. That's Python-esque humour, you know, this Roadrunner type humour. It's not hateful. And the reason that he's not going to reply to any more of my videos is because I think behind the scenes, yeah, people like Marcus Allen and Scott Henderson and his other buddies have been saying to him, for goodness sake, don't engage mumbling. He's killing us. He's killing us. And you're agreeing with him. Because remember, in his last video, he agreed that it wasn't a flag reflection in the lunar module window. He agreed that it wasn't a wet flag, and he agreed that it wasn't. There wasn't one lunar roving vehicle used to film all Apollo 15, 16, and 17 footage. Doing a pretty good job of debunking himself and his panelists, was Ben. That's why he's not responding to me anymore. I think that is the real reason why he would not do another response video, because they've said to him, for goodness sake, don't do it. You're making us all look like a bunch of cretins. Well, I think they do a pretty good job of creating that impression on their own, to be perfectly honest. They don't need me to point it out, but I think as nobody else on the internet seems to be pointing it out, somebody needs to, because it just turns into a backslapping fest between these people. They never ever have anybody on there with an alternative opinion. It's all, oh yeah, that's rubbish. He, yes, rubbish. Ha 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 ha. Oh, they wouldn't have enough power on the lunar module. No, he. You know, and yeah, they're just, as I've said many times, but I'll say it once more, they're just bloody clueless when it comes to this sort of thing. So there's Ben anyway. He's saying he's not going to respond to me anymore because I made a hateful remark. I said I wanted to drop Colin in the wood chipper. And yeah, I suspect the real reason is very different. Okay, well, let's just see what let's see if I can find another couple of clips from Ben here, where he's having a bit of a dig at Brian Cox, and he's saying that at 1 minute he says that I'm not responding to all of the comments in his videos, and then another point he says I'm not going to respond to all of Steve Fumblin's comments. So I'll see if I can find those clips anyway. So on with the next clip. Okay, let's hear Ben accusing me of making ad hominem attacks.
Carry on.
But here again, these people he's got on his panel are demonstrating their complete ignorance with regard.
The comments like those make up the bulk of Steve's recent uploads on this subject. Now, how many times do you have to say that people are ignorant and say, you know, Albert Einstein's got a stupid haircut? It isn't about how many times you say these things. These ad hominems never, ever fill the hole of which could be filled by a logical rebuttal.
Yeah, now, a couple of things to consider here is, one, that I've never actually said that any of them have a ridiculous haircut. And saying that they are ignorant is pointing out that they are ignorant with regard to technical aspects of the Apollo missions that they're commenting on. You know, they don't understand the technology. They really shouldn't be making the comments that they're making. And saying that they're ignorant is not an ad hominem attack. It's pointing out to people that may not be in a position to know that what these guys are saying about the technical aspects of the mission are absolute rubbish. That, you know, they don't know what they're talking about. That's not an ad hominem attack. You know, if I said, Ben, you're a sweaty fat bastard and you're clueless, that's an ad hominem attack, and I'd never personally attack Ben or anyone else like that. Wouldn't make those sort of personal remarks. I wouldn't make that sort of personal attack. If I say you're clueless, that's not an ad hominem. If I say you're a sweaty fat bastard and you're clueless, that is an ad hominem. That is the difference. And by saying that people are ignorant, that's not insulting them. That's pointing out that they are ignorant with regard what they're talking about. And people should not believe what they're saying, because they don't know what they're looking at. When they start commenting on technical things, they've got no idea what they're talking about. They are ignorant. That's not an insult. That's just pointing out that they don't know what they're talking about. You know, I didn't say Scott Anderson is a four-eyed cretin. You know, I might have said he's clueless. And probably have on many occasions, but I don't attack him his personal appearance. I don't make sort of personal attacks. I just attack what they're saying and point out that you know, they don't know what they're talking about. That is not an ad hominem attack. Now, maybe you should look at you know, some of the stuff I've said. Look and listen, and look at some of the stuff that Ben Emlyn-Jones has said in the following clips, and I think if anyone is making ad hominem attacks, Ben, it's yourself. Yes, indeed. Okay, let's just let this run on a bit.
A rational argument. And that's something, you're not the only person who doesn't understand this, Steve. A lot of people do. In fact, like I say, it's the normal way to do business in this world today.
Yeah, and it's, as we'll see from the next couple of clips, it's the it certainly is the normal way of normal way Ben does business. And I think I put forward logical arguments. Personally. Anyway, so take a look at this, and you know, take a look at you know, you can hear in the background what I've said, you know, with regard to his people, and he's saying they're ad hominem attacks. It's like saying Albert Einstein's got a stupid haircut. I think he's wrong. That's not the context of it whatsoever. There's no personal attack there. It's pointing out the guys are ignorant. How many times do I have to say that? Well, I don't know. How many times do I have to say that before it sinks in what I'm saying? So let's see some. Let's see Ben. Oh, actually, no. Let's just see what else he says.
And you're doing business the usual way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see a couple of clips from Ben, and you can make your mind up yourself as to which one of us is making the ad hominem attacks. Okay, well, let's just see what Ben has to say about Brian Cox.
Believes the earth is round too. He's actually one of these sort of like nicer skeptics.
He's talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson here. And he's saying, yes, he could probably have a discussion with Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he couldn't have a discussion with Brian Cox.
It's funny because I listened to a radio show with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Professor Brian Cox, and Cox was being his usual obnoxious, prickish, effeminate, snide, bitchy self. And you could...
Really? Would that be classed as an ad hominem attack, Ben, I wonder?
And Tyson, although he agreed with him, you could hear from his voice that Tyson was uncomfortable with his attitude.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of this stuff that he's actually talking about and see what Professor Cox is actually saying, but I suspect he's just a little bit more... Yeah, some people might sort of dance around the subject and not actually call a spade a spade. Whereas Brian Cox might actually jump in and say, you know, and use the sort of language that I use. You know, these people are idiots, they're clueless. Whereas Neil deGrasse Tyson might sort of dance a little bit around the edges and say the same thing, but much nicer. Use nicer words, so sort of it's not so offensive. But the bottom line is, he's saying the same thing. So I suspect that's going to be that's what's going to be what's got Ben's back up here. But yes, that certainly seems like an ad hominem attack to me. Maybe I should check the definition of that. But anyway, on with the next clip. Let's see the next one. Okay, here we have Ben again. And sorry, I've just I'm eating a jelly snake again, but these things are delicious. Here's Ben with more comments about Professor Brian Cox.
Hugo Rune says, but Ben, you agree with everything Brian, who's a pretty boy then, Cox says. Hugo, I agree with nothing he says. Every time he opens his mouth, he spouts the most incredible drivel. And it's not just what he says, it's the way he says it. It's his arrogance. It's his contempt he has for people basically on our side of things. That's what I can't stand. As I said...
Because he's smart enough to know that you're all talking rubbish. And he probably feels that there should be somebody out there saying it in plain language, in language that everybody's going to understand, you know, exactly what he thinks and why. And I think, you know, it's a really bad idea to spread all this bloody nonsense about fake moon landings and free energy and, you know, 9/11 being a put-up job done with, you know, directed energy weapons. I mean, this is filling the heads of the gullible with nonsense. And I can understand if that makes Professor Brian Cox angry, to be perfectly honest.
Neil deGrasse Tyson agrees with Professor Brian Cox on almost everything, but he's polite. He is respectful, and he is professional. Cox is none of those things. Cox is an arrogant sucker of the media. He's a massive publicity BBC whore.
Would this be classed as an ad hominem attack, do you think, anyone?
And he's a horrible, slimy-faced, shiny-skinned little toad.
Well, I'm glad you're being professional, Ben, and you're not going down the path of these ad hominem attacks. And it's good to see you being professional and professionally rebutting what Professor Cox has to say.
Well, I loathe him. I never want to. As I said, don't let me near him. All right.
Don't let me near him. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Crime prevention. Just don't ever arrange meetings with the two of us together.
So he's thinking of committing a crime. He's considering bludgeoning Professor Cox to death, or regardless of what he tells Professor Fez, he would probably love. He probably fantasises about luring Professor Cox into a wood chipper.
It's not a threat. I'm just a suggestion of crime prevention.
Okay, well, on with another couple of clips. These are fun, these, aren't they? While we're on the Emlyn-Jones ad-hominems, let's have a listen to what he's got to say about Stephen Greer.
Addicted to steroids, GJP2. I'm 62 years old and I can bench 46. Greer is a con man. But, you know, Ben Grizzly says he's a con man. I actually do. I don't know if I think he's maybe so narcissistic he can't see it. But he does mislead, and he does. I think his business practices are immoral. And Mel O'Brien has said it as well enough that he's just an arrogant, narcissistic twat, basically. He's really.
So he's an arrogant, narcissistic twat, is he, Ben? Is that an ad hominem by any chance?
His films, his first videos were really good. But his new one, the one he did called Sirius, was just stupid. It was just shot after shot of him wearing tight jeans.
Okay, I think that'll do. So that's Ben with an ad hominem attack on Stephen Greer. Where will this ever stop? Okay, so let's just go from the ad hominems to just a comment Ben made about me not addressing all of the points raised by somebody. Might have been Scott Henderson.
This is just an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to go forward now to 12:22. Here we go. And get the right place.
Started this a little early, sorry about that.
Now, the oil leak that...
Right, yeah. Yeah, this is... Scott has made a good point. He's studied the lunar rover quite considerably. He makes a number of points about it.
All of them wrong.
Most of which, at least half of which, Steve doesn't address in this series of films. But he does address some of the things that...
Yeah. So there's Ben saying that, you know, I only addressed half of the points. And in the next clip, we'll see Ben saying that, well, it's not necessary to address all of the points, of course. But, yeah, as I'm sure I say in the next clip, and I've said before, a lot of the points made by Scott Henderson are not points. It's just ridiculous rubbish that's not worthy of comment. Okay, well, I think just that short clip will do. Let's just go on to the next one, and I should be through this fairly quickly with any luck. Okay, so we've seen Ben saying that Steve Mumbling doesn't address all of the points raised by himself and Scott Henderson and Marcus Allen. You've got to bear in mind that a lot of the points made by those guys are offensive rubbish. They're not worthy of a response, especially the ones made by Scott Henderson. They're just too ridiculous for words. Buried Bentleys and bicycle chains. On the film set for the moon landings, the guy is just his photographic analytical ability is zero. Actually, it's probably well into the minus. I would think the guy is just a nutcase, if he believes what he's saying. Anyway, Ben was saying that Steve Mumbling does not address all of the points made by Marcus Allen and Scott Henderson and himself. Yet here we have Ben saying that he's not going to address all of my points.
And I'm going to post a reply to every single point he makes in them. And I watched the videos now, and I've worked out, and I've realised I can't actually respond to every single point right now in this particular video. I can't respond to all the points he makes. I don't have the amount of information, I don't have an answer at this particular point. But that's not a problem. That doesn't mean I'll never have an answer. It doesn't mean there is no answer. And
so he's not going to respond to all of my points. A lot of the points he can't respond to, of course, because they kill the arguments of these guys, the ridiculous arguments of these guys, stone dead. He knows that as well. And in this video himself, he debunks his cohorts. He says, oh yes, well, you can see the measurement lines on the graticule, so that kills the flag reflection argument, doesn't it? He says, well, yeah, okay, Steve Mumbling's probably right, it's not a wet flag, so you can put a line through Scott Henderson's wet flag. This is Ben debunking himself, or debunking his own argument, his own panel. And then he says, oh, well, with the lunar rover, yeah, okay, all right, well, they didn't use the same rover for all three, film shoots. They used a different one, different prop for one of them, So, so he can't answer most of the points because they're valid and they destroy these guys, the ridiculous arguments put forward by these guys. But anyway, he's saying he can't answer all the points. And we've just seen a video clip of him complaining that I didn't answer all of his points. Well, I think I've explained why, satisfactorily, because you can't argue there's a buried Bentley on a landfill site. This is why it's just too ridiculous for words, absolutely too ridiculous for words. And there's a bicycle chain, and I think one of them is a beer can. Just absolute nonsense, ridiculous twaddle. Anyway, I think that'll do. I think it's sort of. I just thought I'd put a very short video together just to show Ben, show Ben saying the opposite of what he said before. He does this quite often. So he says, well, I don't answer all of his points, and then he's on there saying he's not going to answer all of my points, or he can't answer all of my points. Is more to the point.
that somebody else might not be able to provide an answer to Steve.
Oh, there we go. So he can't provide an answer, but he thinks someone else may be able to. Well, they won't be able to, I'll tell you that now, because the moon landings are fact, historical fact. They happen exactly as the history books tell us.
Steve is necessarily correct, and he's proved all his detractors wrong. Although people claim that, of course.
Well, of course, because I have, and you can't respond. And neither will they be able to. I'd really like to see Scott Henderson explain why the inverse square law would prevent high definition images being transmitted from the moon, or being transmitted from the moon and being received on Earth. I'd love to hear that one. And I'd love to ask Marcus Allen where he got the impression that ham radio operators only operate on long wave. Or where he got the impression they didn't have microwave equipment, or where he got the impression they were actually listening to the microwave link and not the VHF high band comms. What would their answers be to that? And yeah, I don't know. This is just a very short video because I just thought I'd do another quick video just to point out that Ben Emlyn-Jones is just as guilty as myself or anyone else of the occasional ad hominem attack. and very occasionally being hypocritical. Although I'd like to think that I wouldn't be as hypocritical as Ben, but I'm sure he might be able to find something. But we've got a couple of clips there of him saying, well, Steve doesn't answer all the points. And another clip of him saying, well, I'm not going to answer all Steve's points. So, I didn't actually throw in a clip of him saying, well, you know, these... did I? I can't remember now, because these are all done at different times, remember? Whether I threw in a clip of Ben saying, you know, Steve mumbling, he makes these ad hominem attacks and he's being unprofessional, and then I threw in some clips of Ben being unprofessional and throwing in the ad hominem attacks. All right, well, as always, thank you very much indeed if you've made it all the way through to this point, and maybe I'll catch you again.